Recently online, I've seen a lot of talk about the West Marches style of campaign, and I wanted to give a few thoughts on how you might do it in the world of Greyhawk. Today on Greyhawk Grognard. So before we could talk about how to do a West Marches campaign in Greyhawk, we have to establish what do we mean by a West Marches campaign. It's a style of campaign that kind of harkens back to the original roots of D&D, where you had basically rotating parties, right? So you the parties would change the composition, which characters are playing, depending on who could show up that evening. And in a Western Marches style of campaign, the players themselves are responsible for scheduling. So if you want to, if your character wants to play with, character X and Y, you have to talk to the players and figure out when you can all get together. Now, the problem with that is, or I should say, one of the features of that is that if you can't play until, say, Saturday, and another group of players comes in on Thursday, their actions in the game are going to happen before yours. So let's say you were going to explore a ruined cathedral that you had found out in the wilderness, and the Thursday players decide that's where they want to go. By the time your players get there, you're going to find the result of the Thursday players' adventure. So a lot of things might be killed, a lot of the treasures might already be gone. So there's definitely a sense of competition in the sense that you want to go, you want to make sure that you get the stuff before other players. And of course, some of those Thursday players and some of you Saturday players could then get together and play on Monday. And it's constantly rotating out. There's not the concept of this is the party. It's there's a broad pool of players and characters, and whoever's in the adventure depends on who shows up at any given time. So that's one feature of it. Um, a West Marches style campaign really leans heavily into exploration, right? So there's no overarching plot. There's no, there's no end point. There's no big bad evil guy to kill, and then you've won the campaign. It is ongoing. It is you're exploring, and that implies the existence of a frontier of sorts, right? So if in order to explore, you need a place to explore. So it won't work really well in a very built up civilized area. Um, and what we see in that sense is that the adventures are um, very episodic, right? So it's not like you can end you can end the game with all your guys still out in the wilderness. There's a base or bases, and the game has to end with your characters back at that base. There's no camping out in the dungeon unless you're planning on playing the exact same people tomorrow. And even then, it's probably a better idea not to do it because who knows what could happen scheduling wise. So uh, because they are episodic adventures, you're kind of limited in how far out you want to go, and because you have to have time to come back. And you know, when it was originally described um, by what was it, Ben Robbins, and he's the one who coined the term because that was the name of his campaign. And the way he set it up was he had different regions on his map, and he had encounter tables for those regions, and he had stocked them with different dungeons and stuff. And there were connections, clues that you could, see what was going on. And there was a home base village or town, and nothing happened in the town. All the adventures happened in the West Marches. So you have this very idea, very old school idea of your home base is safe, nothing exciting happens there, all the excitement is out in the wilderness on the frontier. And that's another central locus of the central idea of this style of campaign. Hi everybody, please help me keep Greyhawk alive by liking this video and subscribing. It really does help. You can also become a member of the channel or support me on Patreon and get early access to my videos, exclusive content, free or at cost copies of my Greyheim Adventures modules, and more. Thanks, and now back to the show. Now, when it comes to doing a Greyhawk West Marches campaign, the obvious question is where would you put it? where on the map is there a place that is, or places that are that can be considered a frontier. And because the way that the world of Greyhawk is set up, the Flanaess especially, most of the territory is taken up by civilized uh, realms, right? So you have out in the east, you've got the Great Kingdom. In the center, you've got the city of Greyhawk and Furiondi and Nyrond and the Shield Lands and so on. And in the Southwest, you've got KO Land and all its adjacent things. So, in terms of that, you're kind of limited in where you can actually set a frontier style game. But that doesn't mean that there aren't any, because you have these huge tracts of wilderness in certain places, along the periphery, which is what you would expect. And there are also some in what you might consider interior of the Flanaess. So, for example, the Yattle Mountains. They're between Ket and Perrinland and Eckbeer up in the northwest. There's a whole mountain range which is fairly unclaimed. Obviously the edges are going to be claimed by the powers and so forth, but the interior, there's a couple of modules have been set there. Lost Caverns of Sajkant, of course, is a big one, and the Forgotten Temple of Tharizdun is in there. But they're kind of along the eastern edge of the mountains. But you could set up a great uh, campaign like that going into the mountains. Maybe the theme is going to be, Igwilv, the Witch Queen, who ruled over Perrinland. It is, there could be a lot more ruins of her experiments and places of power and so forth in the mountains, and a lot of people are going to be drawn to those, and you could have a lot of fun really sketching out more dungeons, and of course it being a very dense and large mountainous area, you could do all kinds of things with giants and dragons, and there's going to be gnomes and dwarves and so forth out there. So there's a lot of stuff you could do. It's very much of a pure wilderness that you can play with. Another place you could do that is in the northeast of the Flanaess, where you have the border with the Sulois barbarians up there. You have the Rakers and some other, the Griff Mountains, big, huge, imposing peaks. And there's a bunch of stuff that you could do up there too. I mean, we had a couple of adventures up there. Five shall be one, that kind of thing. So we have a little detail. There's orc cities underground. There's probably going to be some shrines to the lost god of the Sul, Vatun, god of winters. He's imprisoned now, but there's going to be some lost things up there. Obviously, there's lots of barbarian tribes up there that you're going to be able to interact with as a more civilized thing. You could start in Ratic, and that would be your base, and then you would go out into the wilderness and so forth. But you can't really go that far, but there's some civilized areas out there. In fact, you could even run a barbarian campaign if you were playing Adventures Dark and Deep. You could have Scalds and barbarians, and you could get the hunter class in there from that Gary Gygax wrote a while ago. There's a whole bunch of ways you could do this, and have those mountains out there. Another possibility would be either in Hetmanaland or the Amadeo jungle, um, where you could have, say, a sort of a trading post established by some merchants from Kaoland or from the Sea Barons or something like that on the coast there. And then that trading post would be your safe haven. And then you could go in and explore, and there could be all kinds of Ulman ruins. And it's a jungle, so there could be yuan tea and all kinds of cool stuff in there. Jungle choked ruins are always a big thing. There's also, of course, the Forgotten City is down there. There's all kinds of things you could do. So that's just three off the bat. If you're looking for something a little more interior, there is the Vespé Forest. That's a big. It's not exactly unknown. It's not a frontier in that sense, but it is very enclosed. And if you go further in, there's going to be, obviously less signs of civilization and so forth. You could do the same thing around the Bright Desert. Maybe you're based out of Hardby, and you're going into the Aber Als. There's going to be all kinds of old mines, and there's nomad threats, and we have the the Ghost Tower of Inverness is around there. You know, that could be kind of like a lamppost in the exploration of the campaign of the area and so forth. So, you know, there are ways to do this that you could really take this style of play and run with it. And you don't need to make a big, huge, expansive campaign. This kind of campaign, because of that requirement that you have to go back to the place you started, really limits where, you know, how much you can go out. But you can pack a lot into a couple of 30-mile hexes. There's really a lot you can play with in there, especially if you're going into a very densely forested area or densely mountainous area, or lots of hills and so forth. You know, uh, 2 miles away could be a completely different thing than where you are now. You know, so that's part of it, is having that kind of the terrain, you know, limiting as a limiting factor can really help with this kind of thing. So anyway, those are just a couple of ideas off the top of my head. I'm sure there's other places in the Flness you could do this. You know, obviously you could do it on the western edge. You know, the Hell Furnaces, you could do the same sort of thing. The Barrier Peaks are out there. You could do that there. There's some, you know, there's all kinds of places, but the idea is that it's on the periphery. You really want it to be that, you know, that on the very edge. You could work in, at least if you wanted to, the Keep on the Borderlands. You know, it's kind of designed as that sort of safe haven that you go back to, and then you go out and you go back and you go back. So, you know, you could definitely adapt that. You know, there's all kinds of things you can do up there. So anyway, hope you like this one. Let me know what you think in the comments. Have you ever played in or run a West Marches style campaign? Have you ever done one of those in Greyhawk? Let me know. I would love to hear about it. Hope you're all having a wonderful, wonderful day, and I will talk to you all later.
Thanks for watching today's video. Please remember to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Below you'll find links to my Patreon, which helps make these videos possible. You'll also find the web store where you can buy my books, and my blog where you'll find all sorts of free downloads and other articles. Thanks, and have a great day.